Hey all, this is Future Adam coming at you right before the video begins, just to take a moment to shamelessly plug my new book, my memoir about growing up neurodivergent, Uncommon Sense, An Autistic Journey. Check it out at latitude46publishing.com or at your favorite local bookstore. And without further ado, here's the video.
Everybody, this is Lucia of Lucia's Neurodivergent Life. We're going to be talking about social media, and I have two guests with me. Introduce yourselves.
I'm Adam, I'm from Differently Wired.
I am Jaden. I guess you could say that I'm from everywhere.
Yep, he's watching you when you sleep.
Like it? I got better things to do than that.
All right, so we wanted to talk about social media because obviously it is a thing that is prevalent in most people's lives in some way or another, obviously. And considering the absolute chaos of the last 2 years, I'm sure a lot of us are kind of rethinking some things about social media. There's both pros and cons to it, and we're going to talk about all of that today. So where should we start?
Well, I mean, we could just... Social media is kind of the thing that connects us all these days, right? So like, we're all on it all the time, especially with the pandemic. And I just feel like it's important to talk about how that may have like brought some people together, made some opinions more extreme, amplified some behavior. There's a lot of impacts it has had on people, especially in a pandemic where we can't do anything but socialize through social media.
Exactly. And I've kind of relied on social media for connecting with people who are like me, who are kind of weird. I have a hard time really connecting with people in my actual physical vicinity because when you have the entire world to choose from, which is the internet, it's a lot easier to find people who are like you, like other autistic people or neurodivergent people or people who like dinosaurs or whatever it is that is unique about you. So
you found me, and I'm in Ontario and you're in Tennessee, so
well, yeah, it's like we have so much in common, yet we're literally like a continent apart. So wait, what's Canada? What's Ontario? You didn't even say Canada. You said Ontario.
Ontario's the province.
Ontario.
Provinces are like states.
Yeah, okay. We're learning things today. So
geography lesson.
Yes. So something I have noticed about social media is how, how do I word this? Oof. I feel like when it comes to social media, because we're able to kind of form things like, groups online, we kind of form little subcultures of pretty much anything. It could be like, oh, I'm a part of this demographic and so I'm going to join this group. Or I am really into this video game and I'm going to join this group and this group. And it kind of creates sort of I don't know, I feel like it kind of contributes to some level of tribalism a little bit. I mean, it has positives to it, but actually, Jaden, you had some interesting points on this. You actually had a statement here about tribalism.
Social media, it allows people to form these, like-minded cliques, essentially, that where people are more they're more willing to listen to validating opinions rather than dissenting opinions. They tend to form an echo chamber, and then they fall back on the fallacy that all these people can't be wrong. But the thing of it is, they absolutely can be wrong, and often, honestly, are with a lot of different things. But and history has shown that this, the social division between all these people can't be wrong versus, dissenting opinions or whatever. It's been the case for a lot of different things that has caused hatred in other things as well throughout history. Galileo was a good example of that. And so were the Salem witch trials, and then the list is just, it goes on and on and on. And there's so many examples of how that has turned out very badly for people that don't fall in line, essentially. And
and along that line, like, it seems like a lot of people don't know how to civilly disagree. It's almost like disagreement equals like a total, I don't know, like hatred of each other, sort of. Like, it's like, oh, because you disagree with my opinion, you're the enemy, and I hate you and you hate me, and this kind of feeds into the concept of tribalism and things like that. So that's definitely something I've noticed a lot. So the one social media platform that I've used probably the most is Facebook. Yeah, I know I'm such a boomer. Actually, I'm a millennial, but now now Facebook, I think, is considered like the old people kind of platform. Yeah, I still I do too. Well, sort of. I mean, now I feel like now I've kind of stepped back enough from it that I can appreciate other social medias on sort of an equal level, but I have used it the most heavily, and I've noticed like people they struggle so much to just civilly disagree on things. It's like, it's to the point where when people create like a Facebook group with like-minded opinions, rather than allowing other people to disagree, they'll like kick out the people who disagree, and people are kind of drawing lines about like where they're like drawing lines between like what is an acceptable opinion, what is not, and it's like what you're allowed to disagree on, what you're not allowed to disagree on. So
and I also noted that social media companies, they're actually making that worse, because they are trying to dictate what is and is not misinformation. And when you do that, you're taking what people think versus what people, or not what people would do. You take what people think versus what actually is. You remove the process of researching these opinions, and when you silence a specific person because of the opinion that they hold, whether it's true or not, the only thing that does is give them credibility. And then make social media look all that much worse than it actually is.
There's like a lot of interesting debate on this about like misinformation, and like where do you draw the line, where like what kind of misinformation should we not allow, what do we count as misinformation, because there are a lot of things that like can, I think, genuinely cause people to go absolutely nuts. Like like it's kind of like when you go into a you can't go into a movie theater and yell fire. Like you'll get arrested.
On a plane and yell. No.
Yeah, you can't do that stuff. And like, and I feel like with social media, it's not quite as black and white as that, but it's like people, when they spread certain types of misinformation, there is a risk of for instance, like encouraging violence and things like that, and that's where it gets a little bit like controversial, but like, I don't know. It's really tough.
If I can touch on some of that, because I had some points on. Okay.
Yes.
First off, I think you're right, Lucia. There is a fine line between what censoring a legit but dissenting opinion and actually silencing someone who's harmful. And I think sometimes we don't walk that line very well online. But like, to the point about misinformation and echo chambers and groupthink, which is basically where a bunch of people are together and they kind of feed into each other's common beliefs and values, and they don't tolerate any dissenting. like the problem when that mixes with misinformation from like the super right wing or whatnot or whatever groups, you end up with like the politicization of mask mandates in the US. You end up with things like, you know, the anti-vax lobby going crazy, you know, like, and how these people, and I'm going to use my own example as a Canadian context because I don't know American politics as well as Canadian, but like some people in our recent election were pissed off at Justin Trudeau, which is fine. If you have a legitimate criticism against the politician, that's fine. They don't. It's all just misinformation and hearsay and, oh, well, I don't like him because blah, 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 or like I'm angry. I don't even know why I'm angry. I'm just angry
like,
because...
I just don't like your face, and that's why...
Yeah, exactly. But
that's why I'm going to completely discredit you as a person, kind of thing.
And this is what it becomes, because then like the conspiracy theories mix with the misinformation, mix with the hate, and it just becomes this like toxic soup.
It does. Very, very toxic soup that nobody should eat. Don't touch that stuff.
No. So, and this is, yeah, and this is what social media can do when it creates echo chambers like that. But at the same time, if you don't shoot down hate and you just allow all of it to exist, you run the risk of creating more of these kind of groups too. So like,
yeah, and I think that's really, really tough thing about that though is kind of discerning what, you know, what counts as hate and what doesn't, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of like a wide variety of opinions on that. Like, you know, there are a lot of, you know, really far right, cut that out. There are a lot of far right, like extremely far right, like conspiracy theory kind of like websites and things like that just post like the most shocking stuff, but like to them that's just normal. They don't consider that like hate. So it's like you're essentially you're trying to operate with like different people who have completely different realities, and I think that like the tendency for us to want to gather like in groups, including on the internet, kind of contributes to this, and I think it's contributed to like even more polarization. Like, at least in the United States, as far as I know, I feel like everyone's just kind of gone crazy and we're all against each other, and we're all very much, we're more than ever, we're like so embedded in our own reality that it's harder to bridge the gap and like have an honest conversation with someone who has a different viewpoint. So yeah.
Well, and then, I mean, but on the other side as well, like, this is not us telling you, the viewer, if something is toxic, you have to keep it on. You have to allow that person to continue to see your social media feed and that kind of too. Like, I mean, no, you are allowed your safe space even online. And if someone is not safe for your mental health, you are absolutely allowed to kick them out. And if a group is meant to be a safe space for certain people who are marginalized, absolutely don't allow certain things in there. But this again is where there's a line, and I don't know if we can do it impartially on Facebook or other social medias because these algorithms are all biased.
They are. Mm-hmm. But I like what you said about how, you know, you can decide who you want in your group, and like, or what kind of behavior you want in your group, because like there is a need for, you know, specific types of spaces, and like, you know, for instance, like safe, like, and I'm using this in the more, I guess, accurate term, safe spaces for like someone, like people with like trauma, for instance. Like if you want to be in a group where people will more diligently use like trigger warnings on certain topics, and you're, you know, a trauma survivor, that can be really important to have. Obviously, not every single Facebook group has to have this or is expected to have this, but it's nice to have some groups that do, like that's their guidelines. And yeah, and so that's kind of definitely a good thing about it. And from my personal experience, like what I've really liked, I think, about having a gaming channel and deciding to start a Discord server is that the types of, like, the kind of people who watch my my streams, like I've noticed there's not like a whole lot of people watching, but the people who do, they're usually really like friendly, wholesome people. I don't know how else to describe that. And so when I created the Waffle Zone, it's like, so overall it's a very like wholesome Discord server for the most part. Sometimes people post weird stuff, but we're just all like nice to each other, and I don't know, I like it. I like my little community, so that's definitely a plus. So obviously there's issues not just with Facebook, but there's issues with other social medias. Now, I'm not as experienced with some of them. Like, I can't really comment much on things like, Instagram or TikTok. I still kind of am just like weirded out by most of TikTok. There's some genuinely funny stuff on there, but like there's stuff that I'm like, why is this viral? I don't get it. I'm not commenting on those though, but like even on YouTube, like there's some issues with things like YouTube, and Jaden has had some experience with some of the more negative side of trying to create, specifically trying to create YouTube videos, which I think has kind of influenced his views of social media and like trying to basically avoid it or just be really careful on it. So, Jane, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and the irony of that too is like YouTube isn't the only place I've dealt with that either. And also dealt with that a little bit on Twitch, though not nearly as bad. But no, with YouTube, I had a YouTube channel. I first joined YouTube back in like 2006. So I was pretty much early into the
You're
YouTube
an OG,
scene.
an OG YouTuber.
Basically, yeah, I was. And the thing is, I never really created videos until right around 2009, I think, something like that. And I never really got any views, and that wasn't really why I did it anyway. But there came a day or a time, I guess you could say, where my videos were starting to get attention from trolls, of all things. So instead of getting like, positive feedback, positive comments, and things that were constructive to my furthering the channel, I got a bunch of people who essentially just didn't even watch the content. They would downvote it so I would lose visibility. They would negatively comment just because they could, kind of a thing. And it got to the point where it was so bad, I couldn't even continue with it at that point, and I deleted it.
Yeah, the whole channel.
And the whole channel, everything. At the time that I deleted it, I was well over 100 videos in. That's how many I had created.
Wow, that's insane.
Wow. Yeah.
So all that history is just gone because of some trolls, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate.
And since then, I've actually had problems with YouTube staff specifically as well, but that's another story. So
yeah,
and that's
like,
just another reason why I don't use YouTube very much for videos, video creation anymore.
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably a reasonable, I guess, reason. It's so weird to me that like you would have a very small channel like that hardly got any views, and somehow it was all like negative comments and stuff. Because even on videos that have very few views, there's a lot of like really good content that has very few views and like mostly positive. Maybe you'll get one or two negative comments, and just from like the content that I've seen you create, which from what I know, I'm guessing it was mostly like gaming clips, right? And you posted like a few rants and things like that every once in a while.
Yeah, it's same content that you've seen.
Yeah,
exactly the same.
Yeah, so it's like kind of like just commentary on random issues and stuff like that, and it's like, I don't know, it didn't seem like it seems to be very fitting for YouTube. It's not like the kind of thing that I feel like people would downvote for no reason. So it's so weird. But I can say, like, just from experience with someone who like has some videos that have high viewerships, more specifically like my Asperger's documentary, like the comments on there, it's like 90%, maybe even more than that, like 95% of them, like the comments were positive, and then the rest, like all the trolling comments, like there was very, very small amount. It was still aggravating either way. I got quite a few. Honestly, the most common troll comment, it's like it's not even that bad. It's just sad and kind of funny, is people would just post the word ass burgers to make fun of how it sounds, and I'm like, Thank you. Yes, that is how it is pronounced, at least in the US. But it's like very creative. Nobody has come up with that joke before.
I wrote that joke into my memoir just because I thought it was hilarious.
Oh,
but
gosh.
I also think it's so groan worthy because, oh god, yes, I know that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's like that's old news now. That joke has been exhausted. Like even South Park used that joke, so we're good.
Yeah, but like it's funny. So my YouTube channel never quite got as big as what you described, Jaden, but I did start one about like neurodiversity and autism awareness and all that stuff a couple of years ago. And I don't really have that many followers. I think I have like 100 some, but like I've started seeing the occasional negative troll comment, and even on my Differently Wired on Facebook, like occasionally, very occasionally, but sometimes I'll post something like, "I stand with neurodivergent people and people and marginalized people in the United States who are going through Donald Trump, blah blah blah." I posted something like this last year, and I had like some negative troll comment about how you have no idea what Donald Trump has done for us, blah blah blah, and because this big, it's like.
Oh gosh. I don't even know if you could call them trolls, because that sounds like some of the people who genuinely believe that. So I feel like trolls are the ones who are like just trying to get a rise out of you mostly.
Oh, and I had someone tell me that ADHD wasn't a real thing after I posted the video.
Oh gosh, I can imagine the rage you must have felt.
Especially considering I had just been diagnosed with ADHD, so I was kind of riding high on that whole, co-diagnosis, multiple neurodivergent, let's do this,
And then some random butthead decides to just like drag you down for no reason. It's just like, you can't be happy, you can't be validated. Nope,
you're not valid.
That's for babies. Speaking of validation.
Which is where I think it's important as content creators who run spaces that you moderate spaces for like harmful stuff like that.
Yes.
Which is completely valid, but yeah, there's a very fine line, like I keep saying.
Mm-hmm. I'm the kind of person who I lean towards allowing free speech to a point that like, I guess some other people might not like it. Like, if it's like just somebody's opinion and it's not like trying to actually trigger people and stuff like that. Now, it's different if it's in my Discord server, because it's like I personally know, not personally, but like I've gotten to know the people in the server. It's a very small server. So it's like I'm a little more, I want to keep them safe. But when it comes to like, comments on my videos and stuff, it's like if it's just like an opinion, like even if it's like, Asperger's is so overdiagnosed, blah, blah, blah. I've gotten quite a few of those. And I'm like, it's just an opinion. I'm going to remove the things that are like either violating YouTube's community standards or that are extremely harmful and abusive. So, like ones that are obviously so.
But sorry, go ahead, Jaden. Sorry.
Oh, I think I was done.
You had Jaden?
Oh, Jaden have something to say? What? Who? What? Who's
Yeah,
talking?
I have no idea.
Okay.
All of a sudden, we're just like, who's talking? I don't know. I don't
What are
understand.
words? No, I was just gonna say to that point, like, I'm on my neurodiversity channel on my Facebook page, I'm the first one to say something like ABA is a bad thing, and I will post a lot of things about how this is a bad thing and like why you shouldn't be doing it. I'm also not going to shoot down a parent who comments saying, well, this worked for my kid, blah, blah, because it's an opportunity for a conversation. You know what I mean? It's an opportunity to like educate, and like it's possible they won't change their mind and they'll be entrenched and whatever. But my hope is that either by seeing me comment or someone else comment, some autistic person or neurodivergent person who's just lurking on my page and not commenting will be like, oh, that's a counterpoint. And they, you know what I mean? Like, just seeing that discussion unfold can sometimes do more than just being like, no, you're harmful, so you're out.
Yeah, and while of course it's it's up to every person to decide who you want to talk to or who you don't want to talk to, who you want to associate with. Like there's like obviously nobody has to talk to anybody.
That's right.
whether it's parents of autistic children or anything like that.
And ADAs are triggering. I get it. No, absolutely.
But at the same time, like obviously, like you can choose who you want to associate with or like who you don't want to talk to on social media and stuff. Especially if it's out of like safety and your own sanity. At the same time, I feel like, you know, from the perspective of someone who's like, let's say a parent of someone on the autism spectrum who's posting, oh, this worked for me, or just posting their thoughts about, you know, anything in a reasonable manner, talking to them opens up more doors, opens up more information for them, so they know, like, you know, let's say they're not familiar with neurodiversity at all and they have more of a medical view of autism. Having a conversation that might, they may learn something from that, or you might learn something from them, either or. But if we completely shut them out 100%, then all that's really going to do, it's going to keep the ignorant people ignorant, and it's also going to, I feel like, create almost a kind of persecution complex, like, for like the people who are being ignored, because it's like, why won't any autistic people talk to me? Why are they so mean to me? Why are they lashing out at me?
It already does. That's exactly what happens in our community, in our communities half the time, because, like, I think, and again, in saying this, I am not saying to anyone watching that as a marginalized person, you have to put yourself on the line to educate. It is not on you. Google is a thing. People can Google. It's there's a lot of stuff out there. It's not on you. But if you're willing to take a stand and educate, chances are you'll make more change.
Exactly. So, totally.
Yeah.
And
I think it's important to mention too that you know, you mentioned how you know, you were talking about how that whole thing creates an atmosphere in which you know, one group goes and doesn't, you know, treat the other fairly, essentially. That's something that also happens as a result of this social media tribalism as well. This right versus wrong, truth versus fiction, you know, this whole crap. That's why I think it's extremely important for, you know, sites like Twitter or Facebook to stop trying to dictate what the truth is and allow people to discuss it, to allow people to find out what the real truth actually is. The people who want the truth are going to do actual research. People who don't want the truth are always going to have their echo chambers, regardless of where that is. So why not have it in the open where everyone can discuss it?
And I almost feel like maybe something that could help is having some kind of, like, either mandatory or mandatory or optional, like, class, like maybe in school for kids, about social media, how to find, you know, it could be included in like a critical thinking class, even like how to determine basically an opinion from, you know, facts or things like that, how to do actual research, how to not believe something just because someone posted it on Twitter, or put it in a photo of Abraham Lincoln or something like that, like some inspirational quote that doesn't exist.
That is something that right now schools absolutely have to have. Yes. That is a vital part of critical thinking that most people seem to lack for whatever reason. That's something that a lot of people do develop over time if they're willing to stop and say, why do I believe this? Versus, oh, I believe it because yada yada yada,
or because this other person said it. It's like this weird game of telephone where, like, maybe let's say somebody reads something in the news, or somebody reads something in even like a scientific paper, misinterprets it, and then states it as fact somewhere on social media, or even could just state it as an opinion on social media, and someone else takes that as fact, passes it on until the truth is so warped that you don't really know, like, you know, what was actually the contents of that scientific paper? What do these things actually mean versus what people are saying? Stuff like that.
We're playing the telephone game in grade 1?
Yeah. Or even worse, when, you know, when there's an official, you know, you were talking about scientific papers, it made me think about, you know, Wakefield and his whole shtick. You know, what happens when you have officials who are, you know, clearly biased towards something for one reason or another, and falsifies data and then disseminates that data in an official capacity. This is something that critical thinking would also allow you to question as well. It's not just personal opinions out there on the internet. It's, am I being told the truth, or is there more to this? That's what critical thinking is.
Exactly. Yeah. And for those of you watching who are not familiar with Wakefield, it's Andrew Wakefield. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adam. I think he's the guy who made a casual,
causal,
causal or casual. I don't actually know what the word causal. He made like a causal link between vaccines and autism, basically suggesting that vaccines cause autism, and there was a lot of problems with the paper, and that is why it was, I think it was retracted, because
he submitted it to the British journal The Lancet, which then completely, other scientists saw it and completely disproved it. By the time it was disproven, it had already been disseminated far enough that the anti-vax lobby was like, no, this guy's being silenced unfairly because he's going against the establishment. But really,
the persecution complex. I cannot pronounce that for the life of me, but yeah.
But I was going to make a point about critical thinking too. Like, I've heard it said that, well, the university doesn't teach you what to think, but also how to think, and I'm like, okay, I agree with that. But that's kind of classist. Like, it shouldn't be relying on like post-secondary education to teach people how to think. That should be something that's accessible and in the public school system, because especially now, because everyone needs to know how to critically think. I'm grateful that I learned how, but like people who didn't think they know how, but they don't, because we're not teaching it.
I'm so grateful that I went to college. Sorry, had to say that. But that's like, honestly, that's when I really learned critical thinking. I think because it was like a liberal arts school, so I had a very broad range of things that I was learning about. So I actually learned how to more critically think about this stuff. So something else I wanted to touch on is, so two more things that I do want to talk about are basically how we treat like advocates online, just like, whether they're casual or official or any of that. And also I want to talk about like more, and I didn't have this in the notes, but I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of some other effects of social media, namely how we like compare ourselves to other people and things like that. But let's start with, so in Adam's notes, sorry, my brain.
The perfect activist thing?
The perfect activist. Let's talk about that expectation that is often placed on, like, for example, like autistic advocates and others.
Oh, this is fun.
Yeah, I'm going to let you start on this juicy topic.
Okay, so there is a tendency on social media, well, among activism, and in saying this, I am a huge activist, left-wing credentials, I'm a fairly liberal person.
You're freaking leftist?
Black Lives Matter, pro-trans rights or human rights, all of the things. But we tend to have this idea that you have to measure up to a certain level of purity and perfection when you're advocating for something. Otherwise, you're immoral and we shouldn't associate with you. But this doesn't really help. No. Because the thing is, there are a lot of ways to change hearts and minds and advocate for things. And activism's hard. Changing the world is hard, and it's baby steps, and it's not always going to be a perfect solution, and it's not always going to be like the path to success that you want. Like we may never achieve a perfect change, but that doesn't mean we don't try. A lot of times we act as though if we try but we achieve an imperfect point, then we failed, and we bitch out a person who doesn't measure up. But like, no, because the road to Rome is paved by, like, I'm combining metaphors here, but Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's the same kind of thing. Like, I've seen many different approaches to, again, anti-ABA and pro neurodiversity friendliness. I see many different approaches to like neurodiversity rights and like all kinds of things. And unless you're outright advocating for harm, which none of us would be, then I don't see a problem with letting people advocate in their own ways as long as they're not harming anyone.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it's like baby steps. It's like I wish that we could just have a button that you press and it just fixes everything, but it's not really that simple. And also on like the concept of like the perfect activist and whatever, just holding activists to this super super high standard, or even just each other to a high standard. Like for instance, like if you're an autistic person, even if you're not explicitly an online advocate, you know, let's say you're on Twitter. Why would you be on Twitter anyway? But I mean, let's say you're on Twitter. Let's say you're on Twitter, like discussing something important relating to like issues that affect autistic people. If you have a slightly different opinion from the autistic community, and by autistic community I mean like a very specific portion of them, then you're not like, I wouldn't say you're not a real autistic person, but it's like you're like the worst. All of a sudden you're just the worst because you don't share like the same opinion. Like there might be, for example, there are some autistic people who actually don't prefer to be referred to as autistic. They prefer person with autism. Obviously we're trying to move towards, you know, majority using autistic, because to a lot of us it's more, I guess, like humanizing. But like I kind of understand where other people are coming from and their kind of logic behind how they identify, and I want to respect that and not be super forceful, because again, you can't force change. You cannot. It's baby steps, and you can't always do it even just with like one person. Like you can't, like I feel like the goal shouldn't be to like to look at someone who has a different opinion and try to change that person's opinion or change their whole way they view everything, because that's not really how change works. It's more of a gradual cultural shift.
Yes, I'm like, don't get me wrong, if it was up to me, ABA would burn in an unholy hellfire, and we would start using autistic, and we would, you know, all of these things. But I'm sorry, in the real world, if I come across a parent who I'm talking to who is pretty level-headed, has their kid in ABA because they don't have any other resources in that area, but make sure that their kid's not being prevented from stimming and their kid gets breaks and all that stuff. Like, sure, I'm never going to love the fact that their kid's in ABA. Never. But I kind of consider it a victory if I manage to convince them to at least protect their kid's right to stim. You know, like it's little things like that. And then like the little things create bigger things, because then if they're questioning, well, my kid should be able to stim, then maybe eventually they'll be like, well, why am I trying to change my kid at all? You know what I mean? Like, you don't convince people by being like, rah, 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 you're awful, because then you're just going to create those dividing lines again.
Exactly. And I'm probably going to get some crap for this, but like, I guess one example of this is, if you're familiar, I mean, you guys probably already are, but with Mark Rober, the YouTuber, he did that. He hosted a live stream called Color the Spectrum, where he was raising money for an autistic organization.
Oh, the super controversial one, yeah.
Yeah, the super controversial one. And little did most people know, I didn't even know, because I didn't do my research like before the event. I only really figured this out afterwards. But Next for Autism appears to support ABA and has some problematic things about it. And so it's like, yeah, he picked the wrong organization. But you know what I noticed when he first announced this event? He announced it with a video with him talking about his autistic son. And I think he might have used person first language or whatever, but the way that he talked about his son overall, like it was not condescending.
Oh.
It was not belittling, it was not dehumanizing. But more than that, he was like, he seemed like he was just incredibly sweet about it. Like it was
he was trying to help his kid.
Yeah, like I think that the way that he talked about his kid was super respectful and awesome. And I'm like, when I watched it, I'm like, wow, like there are parents who of autistic kids who are that way. And
in real life,
that
I
makes
know
me happy.
Yeah. Like in
So-
real life, I know a lot of my friends who are neurodivergent or in some way, shape, or form who have kids are very pro neurodiversity and are good towards their kids. There's nuance in real life. If you take the internet out of it, all of a sudden you see nuance.
It doesn't always. Nope. No, it doesn't always apply that way. But I know what you mean. Like,
Oh, you know what I mean? Yeah.
some people, it's like they take the social media logic with them when they go out into the real world. So it doesn't always apply. But I see what you're talking about. But like, so it's like, yeah, Mark Rober did make a mistake, I think, by choosing like Next for Autism. The autistic community spoke up about it, and I'm glad that they spoke up about it. And I think that they tried to find some kind of a compromise. I think they were going to give some of the money to an autistic-led organization. I don't know how all of that went down, but it's like the fact that he was super respectful in the way he talks about his son, the fact that he actually, you know, heard the autistic community and tried to make it right. He even talked about on the live stream, because basically the autistic community informed him that a lot of autistic people prefer being referred to as autistic people. And he actually talked about that in the live stream. And it's like, maybe, yeah, that's a really small baby step, right? But that's something. Most people, I don't think, would even do that.
Yeah, and that's exactly my point that I'm trying to make is, excuse me, it's not COVID, I promise.
Asthma. It's just asthma.
Yeah. That's the point I'm trying to make too, is like, I think sometimes if we want, like a lot of activists in any community, and understandably so, because, you know, when you've been part of a marginalized group, you're kind of tired of the shit. It's grating. It's absolutely grating. It wears on you. You're like, oh, another person talking about this and acting like I don't exist. That's nice. But at the same time, like, I think, and this is not me defending having to have these conversations, because it's freaking exhausting. I have to have these same conversations over and over again sometimes, and this is why it's not anyone's responsibility to educate people how Google. But at the same time, like, I think if you're willing to try to educate and accept imperfect baby steps, then that's where the real change starts to happen, like you said, Lucia. Because yeah, I think little things like I said, the mom deciding to police their ABA therapist to make sure the stimming is allowed, or Mark deciding to donate stuff to autistic-led charities and like referring to his son respectfully. These are the little things that eventually build up to big change.
I agree. I was gonna actually ask Jaden if he has any thoughts on this topic. Yeah. I don't know if you have any, but yeah.
I think y'all covered it.
All right. Cool. So one more thing that I wanted to mention, and then we're also going to talk about some positives, because we should end on a positive note. But I just wanted to just briefly mention like how, actually, there's one thing on this topic that we forgot to mention, that content creators, and this includes advocates as well, are often treated as harshly as public figures, like celebrities and things like that, or politicians, even for very small mistakes, even if they genuinely apologize and change, and can get a lot of hate. So there's just something I want to throw out there. It's like, it's the difference is like, or the similarity there is so like weird. It's like all of a sudden, once you're out there publicly and have somewhat of a following, suddenly you're expected to be this perfect angel, and that's not how it works. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was how comparing our lives to someone else's highlights, which is kind of like what a lot of social media does, like things like Facebook and Instagram. Comparing our lives to someone else's highlights in life can be harmful to your mental state. Lots of people report having depression, anxiety, and like looking at other people's lives and thinking, wow, they have such a great life. Like, I wish I could be doing whatever they're doing, or they look so happy with their partner or friends and blah, blah, blah. I wish I had that. And that can be really quite not a fun mental state to be in. So have you guys kind of experienced anything like that when you're scrolling through social media?
I mean, like, I used to compare my everyday life to, to other people's successes, and I learned eventually that, that's a contributing factor to like depression, as you say, and to feeling like you're not doing something right or not doing enough in your life. And the reality is you're probably working your ass off, and may not just be getting as far. That's life,
Yeah, and we might also
and
not even know that the people that we're looking at on our feeds, they might look happy, but they still have problems. Like they might still
yeah,
have issues underneath. Like maybe they took a happy picture with their partner, but they're actually having relational problems. You'll never know.
right.
I mean, I know people who are like the masters of taking really nicely taken pictures of their apartments and their time out with friends and always on Facebook, and like it looks like they're having the greatest time in the world, and they have this really beautiful apartment and all these things, but no, like the reality is far more complicated than that. And then but then scrolling through, and you're like, my God, I went to school just like they did. I did all the things right like they did. I got the job after school. Where did I go wrong? But like life is like you said, that's not life. Like I mean,
It's not. It's not. I mean, I'll admit, I love taking really well arranged photos of things, like especially like food and stuff like that. Like I like it to look nice. It's like art for me. It's like photography, but that's what I recognize it as. And I don't expect that people. I don't want people to think this is how my life is all the time, nice and perfectly neat and stuff. Like I had a bunch of crap sitting on the floor over there, and I just threw it in the other room because it looks better, right? But if you were to like come over to my house and let's say it's just an average day, like there's probably going to be laundry on my floor and all this other stuff. Most of the time I don't really care unless I'm, I guess, trying to impress somebody, which I usually don't, I guess, unless I'm maybe first meeting somebody, first impressions. But because I don't want them to think I'm like this crazy person living in a pigsty. I want them to first see me as a person, and then they can see the pigsty. So, but yeah.
Yeah, there's something else that's important to remember and keep in mind is, when you see social media pictures or videos, you're seeing one brief moment taken out of context of reality amongst millions of actual real moments surrounding it. So you don't really know what's going on. Even if you're watching a 10-minute video, what happened for the other hour they were there? You don't know. So it's important to remember that you're not getting what actually happened. You're getting one moment taken out of context.
Yeah, and the same goes for things like, YouTube videos when you watch, like, let's say a vlog, like a well-edited vlog that someone made.
Yeah.
What you're not seeing is you're not seeing all the times when they coughed or they messed up their words and had to repeat themselves 6,000 times, or when they had to go off to the bathroom, that's something I have to keep in mind when I'm watching other people's YouTube videos, and I'm very much reminded of this when I edit my own videos. I'm like, this is a lot of work to achieve a look of flawlessness or near flawlessness. So it's nutsy. I've been jealous of other YouTubers before. It's not fun. So
I mean, I can tell you this right now, having just finished writing a book. Like my book, like every book on your shelf is the descendant of 5 or 10 books that didn't make the cut and died in the editing process.
Yep.
You know how many times I had to rewrite the damn thing? Like, oh my God. Like it's but that's exactly what, like Jaden said, people don't realize this because they don't have to see it, just like
exactly, they don't have to see the behind the scenes. So another thing, like I keep saying, like, oh, just one more thing. There is one more thing I actually did forget.
Like Steve Jobs, just
so
one more thing.
One more thing. 10 hours later. Okay, I won't let this go too long. So we're autistic, right? Or have ADHD or both. And one thing that I deal with, I don't know if you guys deal with this as well, but like I get information overload. Do you guys get information overload? All the time? Yeah. Like I remember I would have, excuse me, wow. So I would have conversations with Jaden, and I would ask him, what's on your mind, or like, how was this or that, and then he'd be like, don't know, because his brain is like I cannot like process this much stuff, but yeah, that's just like the way we are. It's a beautiful thing. At least we all like kind of understand, like, yep, we got the brain farts today. or we cannot like if I cannot read a bunch of stuff that someone sent me, I have to say like, dude, you just sent me a chapter of your book. I can't. I'm sorry, I can't read this.
And I never judge you for that. I never judge you for that. I get.
So I usually tell people I'll read your stuff once there's an audiobook because that's easier to process. And when it comes to like relating to social media, I find that I get very easily overloaded with social media. It's like, but it's a weird contradiction because I have ADHD and I want, like, I crave dopamine, and you get the dopamine from scrolling through Facebook and checking your notifications. Yeah, the endless scroll and seeing funny memes. But at some point my brain does fry.
Oh, look, a cat.
Oh yeah, like all the other thousands of cats.
I'm gonna share this meme because it's funny. Oh, no one liked my meme. Because you get a dopamine hit from every time you see a love or like a
and then you get it makes me think of rejection sensitive dysphoria as well. I wonder if that also can play a part in that, like, nobody likes my stuff. Even if it's just because like it just didn't show up in people's timeline, I don't know. But also in terms of like, you know, you can make, how many friends can you make on Facebook? I think there's like a 5,000 cap or something like that. It's like 5,000 people, I think, if I'm correct. 500. Maybe it's 500.
Is there a cap even? I didn't think
there is a cap, because I actually have a friend, and he's like, honestly, he's like, not really a friend. He's more of just someone I just randomly met online. But like he's like,
that's not social media for you.
Well, yeah. That's exactly how it
works. It's not a friend, just someone I met. Like, it's fine.
It's more like an acquaintance. Like, I just started following his page, and like he's like the most like wholesome, friendly person ever. And he he literally will make friends with people on Facebook and go and like meet them in person and like take pictures with them and put them on his profile. And I'm like, this is like so sweet. But because he makes so many friends, he reached his friend request like cap. Like, it was, I think it was around 5,000. And that just boggles my mind, because like I have trouble remembering people even from knowing so many people. I'll literally go through my friends list and I'll be like, wow, I forgot like half of these people existed. Like, I'll still kind of remember where I met them, but I can't remember all the details. And I did a little bit of research and came across something called Dunbar's number, which is supposedly a suggested cognitive limit to the number of people with whom one can maintain stable social relationships. And the number that he proposed was about 150 stable relationships. And obviously there's going to probably be some variation depending on the person. For me that sounds like an accurate number, but for others it's like maybe you could have more or less.
I feel like
hold about 10% of that.
Yeah. I feel like being neurodivergent probably plays into that too, because I don't think I can maintain 150 friendships. Mm-hmm. Or at the very least, I have to have friends who like are themselves neurodivergent and are willing to like fade in and out of my life depending on where they're at and where I'm at. Like, oh hey, we haven't talked in forever, but that's okay because we both have ADHD, so we don't notice passage of time. So how are you? Stuff like that.
Exactly. I get so much anxiety when someone gets really pissed at me, like fading in and out of their life, or just like, not replying to messages and things like that, because like there's only so many people I can fit in my head. And while I do genuinely usually like talking to a lot of different types of people, like I can't keep up with everyone. And sometimes, maybe I just won't relate to someone as much as someone else, and that's totally fine. That's totally valid. So it's definitely overloading. I remember when I was really, really addicted to social media, one of the reasons why I left was why I took a step back from it is because it was just overloading. It was too much information I was stuffing in my head. Part of that was ADHD, part of that was OCD. Couldn't take myself away from it. Like hacks your brain. That's kind of how it's designed. And so that was like one reason why I left. Really, honestly, I keep saying left, but I didn't really leave. I just stopped using Facebook every day. Like, I check it maybe a few times a week for like 15 minutes or something, other than Messenger. Like, I'll message people on Messenger, but I won't really check Facebook. But one reason I left, I keep saying left, one reason I stepped back was because of like the overload, but also because of, you know, just the toxicity and the growing like polarization between people on social media. I'm like, I don't want to have these awful interactions with people all the time, because it just was ruining my day, like almost every single day. Like there was always be some kind of bull crap someone would be saying, and I would get upset, or they would get upset, or just all upset at each other collectively.
Yeah.
So
it's just not fun.
It's not. Do you guys have any other, I guess, comments on any of that stuff before we move on to the positives?
Jaden, you first. Do you have anything?
Just that I relate on the last point you made, Lucia, about, you know, how like every time you get on, there's always more bull crap and you have to deal with it, and then you feel like crap, and then your day is ruined. I've been there and done that. That's one of the reasons I stopped pretty much using it myself.
It's a vicious cycle of everyone's bad days triggering everybody else's bad days.
Yeah, basically.
I want to touch too on the fact on the whole, you know, going back to the echo chamber thing, and also how, like, you know, you go along online and like, well, one person's angry at another person for a small little disagreement. It becomes blown out of proportion because that's social media. I have to say, I think one thing I'm really grateful for is my best friend, who I've known since I was like 5. He's more centrist / center right politically than me, who's like left wing. But he's like socially progressive person, but like more fiscally, like, you know, conservative opinion when it comes to like money and stuff, right? And I don't always agree with him. In fact, I very often don't. But I appreciate the fact that my oldest friend is like that, because it's taught me throughout life that it's okay to disagree on things. And it's important to have different opinions, and like still be friends and have different opinions.
Exactly. I think that's very important. That was a point that I did want to touch on as well. That it's possible to disagree and to still be friends, or at least to just be civil to each other. If a disagreement is to the point where it's like it's something you can't live with, like let's say the disagreement is something about your identity and it's incredibly triggering to be around that person, like I think it's reasonable to.
I was gonna say, like, you know, saying trans rights are not human rights is not an opinion. That's that's being an asshole. But
yeah, basically. So but in terms of like the positives of social media, I want to actually talk a little bit about positives, but also some things that we can do to kind of mediate some of the negative stuff. I didn't write anything down for that, but I just thought of that, like, we should talk about sort of some things we could do to like make it. I mean, we can't change social media. I mean more like our relationship to social media.
We can't get Zuckerberg in here in this call. Like, really?
No, I don't think he's interested. So, Jaden, you want to start? You have a positive here listed.
Oh yeah, I thought you were going to talk about mitigating. You know,
yeah, we're gonna do that after we talk about some.
Oh, after,
or maybe, okay. or should we talk about mitigating the negatives and then talk about the positives? I guess it would make more sense,
I think
right?
So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's do that first. So.
Okay, so like.
Anyone want to start? Jaden.
As far as mitigating, you know, the social media problem, honestly, I look at it the same way as if you had a toxic friend. You know, if you have a toxic friend that's gonna make your life miserable every day, you know, just like say bye, don't come back. You know, it's why welcome something into your life that's going to be a negative force, you know, and negative impact on you. Life is too short to deal with that crap, you know. You just gotta you gotta do what you gotta do.
Let's pretend like that toxic person is like a coworker or family member or someone you have to associate with. And likewise, let's say the social media you're using, let's say it's something like that you have to use for something. Like, let's say, like I have to go, I don't have to if I don't want to, but like I choose to go on social media to make posts on my pages that I have, because I manage, you know, the Lucia's Neurodivergent Life page, I manage the Lucia Gaming page. It's kind of like walking into the workplace where that toxic person is and just going about your day, you know, let them exist. If they start yelling bullcrap in the background, just tune it out, do your thing. That's kind of how I would do it. But yeah, if it's something that you like want to completely let go of because it's just all toxic, there's nothing wrong with disconnecting completely. I know there are people who have before. There are people I know who've just completely left Facebook and deleted their account and everything. And sometimes, to me, it's sometimes a little bit sad because I'm like, oh, I miss all the conversations and stuff and all the posts. But like, if it's better for their mental health, it's fine. Yeah. Like, you leave if you need to.
Well, like, I was gonna say too, I mean, I think it's also like, if you don't want to go that whole step of like, you know, I'm done with social media. Boundaries on social media are important too. Like, I mean, I have a toxic family member or two who I love, who in small doses I enjoy being around, but I will not be alone in the same room with, or I will, if I'm there, it's for like a family dinner and then I'm gone, or if it's a coworker, keep it limited to like the things we have to do with each other. But you know what I mean? Like, almost like compartmentalize the toxic. If you have no choice but to deal with the toxic, at least keep it to like over here and be able to walk away and not deal with it.
Exactly.
Yep.
And in terms of like, I actually have some recommendations for specific like apps and extensions that you can use to kind of, customize your experience with social media, as well as like if you have an addiction like I did, this is particularly useful. So in terms of like trying to customize your feed and things like that, or customize like well, if you're on Facebook, for instance, this is what I know about the most. Like I said, I don't really have much to say on the other platforms, but you do not have to follow people who are triggering you or posts that are boring or you're not interested in. Like, you can actually unfollow stuff. I know sometimes when you like a page, it'll automatically follow it. So like when I like a page, if I know I don't want to follow it, because if I just want to like it so it's in my likes, or so that I will know it's there and I could check it when I want, but I don't want to see it in my timeline, I will immediately unfollow. I have actually gone through literally all the pages and all my friends and unfollowed like everyone, which took a long time to do. And after that, I just followed a couple people I wanted to keep up with, and I just followed maybe a few pages that I liked, that I thought, you know, were interesting or wholesome or something, you know, like cat videos or stuff like that. So that was nice. So that's kind of a... Yeah.
There's actually two, like, if you want to target specific people, you like toxic people, you can create a custom friends list and put them as restricted.
Yes, the restricted list.
I do this for coworkers who add me because, I mean, I don't know my coworkers' political opinions and I don't really want to create a drama. So you want to add me on Facebook? Okay, but you're going on a restricted list so that you can't see everything I post.
Yeah. What the restricted list essentially does is if you friend somebody, or they friend you, and you put them on the restricted list, they're still on your friends list, but they can't see your friends only posts. They can only see your public posts. So that is something I do as well. It's like kind of a battle plan to make sure that number one, I will not have people who aren't really my friends like spying on my stuff, but also like something I didn't consider like a long time ago when I had a Facebook account. Like I had posts that were public that I'm like, wait, I don't think this should be public. And I went through a lot of my posts, I made them like friends only. Like, familiarize yourself with how Facebook works and the public versus friends only and things like that. And be aware that like if you're trying to get a job, or if you're applying for SSI and things like that, those people will look at your Facebook, and maybe not all of them, but you know, that's a very likely possibility. And so whatever, yeah. So just keep in mind that, you know, they'll probably see whatever is public.
As a general rule, you should probably keep most of your posts on Facebook friends only, unless there's something specific that you want to make public to share, like
yes.
that you want to share. But
I'm the opposite. I don't really post anything political publicly unless it's related to my,
you know.
Yeah, and I don't even with friends, like I don't even really post stuff politically, just because I have a very diverse group of friends, including even my close friends. So I'm like, I would rather just share, you know, this opinion with this one friend or this other friend, not, you know, not anywhere, but like I'll make a post publicly every once in a while for something related to one of my channels, because it would be something everyone would know anyway. But some other resources I have is there's something called Facebook Purity. I think they have this on most web browsers, on like Google Chrome, I think also Firefox. And essentially what it does is you can customize what you see and what you don't see on Facebook. Like, you know, if you want to remove, I don't think you can remove like timeline ads or anything, but you can remove like if there's like extra panels or things you don't want to see, like if you get information overload from that, you could turn those off. You can, by the way, I'm not sponsored or anything by them, I just really like this. You can actually put in some blocked words, so that if there's certain words in people's posts that you don't want to see, then it won't show you those posts. Like if I were to actually look at my list, I think I still have stuff on there from like 2016 when all of that political craziness was going on. I literally put like almost every political term I could think of related to it. Be like, you know, Trump, Hillary, politics, this, that, like a really long list of terms, because that year was crazy and I didn't want to see any of that stuff. I also changed the Facebook icon. I wish I could show it to you guys. You could change the icon on like the top left of the screen. This is desktop, by the way. So yeah. On the top left of my screen, instead of the Facebook icon, it's this really nice little icon that says shithole, to remind me that this platform is a shithole and I need to be careful what I post.
That's awesome.
So,
that's awesome.
Fun stuff. And two other apps I'd recommend. I know these are for Android, not for, I don't know if they're for Apple or iOS, but I mean, if you have recommendations, Adam, let me know.
I only just got the iPhone again, so I'm a little bit rusty too. So I'm still just
okay.
discovering.
Okay. So for Android, there's something called App Block, and it's pretty much, it does what it says. It will block certain apps. I mean, you can technically access them again. You just have to unblock them in App Block. Just don't block App Block. And you can have it so it blocks it on a schedule. Like if you don't want to be distracted by social media when you're like with your family or when you're at work or something, if you know that, you know, if you have a very predictable schedule, you just want to block certain apps at certain times, and browser pages too. Like if you only have the browser Facebook, you can block that too. You can set a...
I think on iOS it does let you like mute conversations between certain times and all that kind of stuff on
iPhone. Oh, that's good.
Well. So like I haven't really played around with them, but I think my friend was telling me last night that he did that for me when he was waiting for me to send him the election results last night, but he wanted to go to bed. So it lets you block certain things and noises and whatever, and it's built into iOS. I don't know how to do it, but it's there.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that the first thing to do when you're trying to sort of mitigate something about your apps or your phone or your notifications, like, you know, use what's there first, probably. Like with Discord, for instance, you can be very selective about what you want to show and what you don't. If you have all the notifications on and you're in like a Discord server, that's going to be insane. So I just usually will mute every single channel, and then I'll just unmute like one or two channels that I want to get notifications for. So yeah, so there's that.
I'm in like 6 servers for Discord.
Gosh.
And I used to have all my notifications turned on, and it was like nonstop all the time. So I very quickly started to mute them all.
I disabled every single notification on my iPad just because after like every app would be like, AliExpress, order this for dirt cheap, or it's like no, there's too much stuff, go away. Swipe, and the swiping on Apple sucks. So it's like, no, I just want to not see you, but you can do it.
Oh gosh.
Swipe.
Yeah, so...
No, I meant to get rid of it, not touch it and try to buy it.
No! Oh my god, you guys, there's a clip from this movie I need to show you later of, it was from Mitchell's versus the Machines. Have you heard of that? I think it's on Netflix, of this, basically, this crazy family, sort of, pretty normal, crazy family, and the dad like was trying to figure out how to use the computer, and it's like, what do I do? What do I do? Oh no, I just accidentally ordered 6 Swiffers on Amazon. That was the funniest crap ever.
I'd love to say it's not true, but it's totally true.
It is. So we only have a few minutes left, so I'm gonna just quickly like mention the other app. So that's what App Block kind of generally does. There's also another one called Stay Focused, which it kind of does the same thing. You can block apps, but what I really like about it is it can limit the time you spend on apps, like per hour. So if I want to spend only 8 minutes on Facebook per hour, I've done that before, and it'll after that it will block Facebook. So that was really helpful. Do you guys have anything else, I guess, that you would recommend for
iOS
mitigating negative effects?
iOS basically subtly shames you for the amount of screen time you have, because it'll send you notifications like, you used your screen X amount of time today.
I don't count the time that I'm actually utilizing my phone for productive things.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so why don't we talk a little bit about some of the positives of social media, because I want to like leave off on a happy note. So, Jaden, you had one written down.
Yes. So one of the positives that I've actually have found about social media is that it lets you interact with like public figures or whatever that you like or support, and I've been able to briefly speak with a few people that a few public figures that I personally like and support.
That's
like
how we met.
Yeah, I mean, technically, yeah.
That's how we met too.
Yeah, he started messaging me through my page and was like, "Yeah, I liked your documentary," and then we just like started a conversation. So,
yeah, I've actually had the opportunity to speak with like a few Hollywood actors as well, and that's always been fun. Renee Aubignon-Moi, may rest in peace, was one.
You met Odo digitally?
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Sorry.
Oh yeah, he was a nice guy. Really nice. Aaron Eisenberg, I briefly got to speak with him as well.
Dude, you're killing me. You're killing me.
Yeah. And Virginia Hay, I used to speak with her on Facebook quite often. So that's definitely been some positives, especially in the case of Aaron and Renee, because they're not with us anymore. I was happy that I got the chance to speak with them, however briefly it was.
that is awesome. Okay. I don't want to interrupt your nerd rant. We're actually over our time, but I want to still go through the positives. So I'm gonna list off some of mine. So one thing that I find positive is you're able to find obscure or specific communities. For instance, the autistic community or interest-based groups.
Mm-hmm.
And Adam, you said like that's how you kind of accepted being autistic, right?
Yeah. So do you mind if do we have time for me to briefly
A little
talk?
bit.
Okay. So basically, when I first started with this whole thing, I went down the rabbit hole of neurodiversity after stumbling across the term when I was in university. And eventually, I started reading more about it. I stumbled across Lucia and I's mutual friend Steph's blog, Asperger's Illustrated, which was now called Autism Illustrated, but it was Asperger's Illustrated back then. And reading her writing about being autistic is what made me like, I could do this too. I am that. Oh, that's cool. And so it led me to find the community because of the internet and social media in a way that I probably never would have.
Yeah, so big shout out to Steph. Yeah.
Yeah, Steph, you're
and
awesome.
Also, she started the Autistic Gaming Initiative as well. So there's that.
Cool.
So there's lots of autistic people who are coming in and having fun and meeting other gamers and autistic. So that's another example of, I guess, some very specific communities. Also, like, it's easier to find access to support groups, advice, online tutorials, generally helpful things. I use YouTube all the time for tutorials. Got some really long playlists. I have a lot of long playlists in general of everything, but yeah, it's particularly helpful for me for finding support groups like on Facebook. Also, Adam, you had a point about different viewpoints as well.
Well, I mean, kind of like what Jaden said about accessing celebrities, but also like democratizing access to information and viewpoints and conversations too. Like, I mean, used to be someone wanted to make a political or social rant or whatever, they'd have to write an article in a newspaper or magazine. You'd buy the magazine, Awesome.
Or just
now,
have conversations in person.
Yeah, now though, you can do it on social media, and it can stimulate some really great conversations, and everyone can access it, and it just leads to some great mind changing, and
we're not counting Twitter on the great conversation.
No.
I mean, I've seen some good conversations on Twitter. It's just like,
but you can't have a good conversation with 150 characters or less. I'm sorry.
No, you can't. No.
Yeah.
But another thing is memes. That's another positive. It's like a meme culture, both on like YouTube and on Facebook, and like all kinds of memes, all kinds of types. It's just a concise, casual, and entertaining way to relate to people. And Adam, you had a point to make on this as well.
Yeah, like I've literally always processed my world through media and been like, oh, this reminds me of a scene in that movie there, like that I used to explain things back in the day, or like I'd see things that remind me of things in shows I'd watched or read or whatnot, And before the internet, I was like the crazy guy who was quoting Star Wars all the time, or like The Simpsons, or whatever. But now, instead of being like, hey, this is like that scene from that movie, and this is why I think this, I just make a meme of it and share it, and people get it. And
there you go.
It's
there you
the
go.
greatest
I
thing
love
in the
that
world.
so much.
Yeah.
I love your memes. So yeah, that's pretty much all we wanted to talk about today. But I didn't want to just, I guess, wrap this up by just saying, like, everybody, self-care. It's okay to indulge in a little bit of social media, but also, like, be aware of your limits. Like,
That's right.
Monitor how you feel. Like, be selective about where you spend your time, how you spend your time, because that can really influence how your whole day goes. I don't know, just take care of yourselves and all that.
The internet is a wonderful, beautiful place full of awesome communities and a lot of acceptance and a lot of progress and all that stuff. But you are allowed to step back and be like, no.
Take a break. Like, go outside, smell the flowers, or if it's raining, smell the rain. I've been going for walks a lot, even when it's raining. Like the other day, I'm like, I really want to go outside. I'm going to be really sad if I don't go outside when it's raining. So I took my umbrella and I went outside in the rain. So yeah, just do some fun things in life and pursue what you like.
Yep. I just play video games.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, you also write, right, Jaden?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm also a writer.
Nice.
Yeah, writer. And now you have your VTuber thing, so that's another hobby.
Yeah.
So, which can we just say is really awesome.
Yeah, I really like how it turned out. Looks really good.
Yeah, same here. Well, anyway, thank you all for joining us for this podcast, and have a wonderful day. Say bye.
See you guys.
If you like this video and want to see more content by me at Differently Wired, remember to like, subscribe, and share this video on all social media. Also, you can find a link to my Patreon down below, and I'd really love if you continue to support me. You guys rock, like I said, and I really look forward to making more content for you guys. So until next time, keep it neurodivergent, folks.